Hey everyone, welcome to Outside In. I'm your host, Anthony Khaletsky. Today I have Rob Holcombe, the Director of Customer Support at Canopy Tax with me. Rob, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So before we dive in, we had some conversation beforehand, but I'd love to, if you share with the audience just a little bit more about yourself and how you got into customer support.
Sure. It's a crazy story, actually. I was doing a little bit more of customer success when the company that I was working with actually got shut down. U.S. Marshals came in, FTC shut the company down. They had some claims. Turned out they weren't true, but they shut our company down, and I was jobless. And so I went from a normal income to needing someplace to work. And my brother-in-law suggested, hey, why don't you come work for us in this call center? And that was about 5 years ago. And so I started working at the call center, and within 2 weeks was promoted to a team lead and then a supervisor after that. And really the reason that I feel like I progressed really quickly was because I developed a real ambition and passion for helping the customer and for changing people's lives one call at a time. And so that's something that I've always kept with me in anybody that I talk to about support, is that, you get to literally change people's lives every single time you pick up the phone, and that can be 20 times a day. And so that's where I really developed my passion for customer support and moving into, different areas of the customer experience and trying to really be that voice of the customer to any company that I am with at the time. So yeah.
Thanks for that. We had a previous conversation where you were talking about how you're an incredibly meticulous person. So I was wondering if you could expand on how you apply that to your customer support.
Yeah. So I really feel like everybody should be meticulous. Maybe the word meticulous gets a negative connotation. Sometimes maybe detail oriented would be something that people would prefer, but I feel like you should be meticulous in everything that you do, because that's the only way that you get to improve, right? So if I am not meticulous, if I'm not breaking down all of the details, then I could be missing a lot of different things that I could be improving on. And so being meticulous allows me to see the small details that I don't think most people actually see, and the opportunity to develop not only myself, but also the people that I work with. I often compare support to golf, which sounds weird to a lot of people, but there's no such thing as a perfect golfer, right? There's perfect swings every once in a while. Some people get it more often than I do, but typically you're not going to have the perfect golfer who scores a perfect score every single time. They'll have maybe a perfect hole, or maybe even a perfect string of holes. But eventually, because there's so many different little details, there's the grip, there's your stance, there's a swing, there's, different elements with your mentality. There's all these different things that are incorporated that could go wrong. So you're never going to be perfect over an entire round, or some of us over an entire hole. Right. And so support is much the same way. There's so many things that could happen on a call. You have to be able to adapt your tone, adapt your questions, being able to interpret what the customer's saying in their own way. There's injecting humor into every single conversation. How do you do that? And so there's a lot of different things that make it so that we're not going to be perfect on basically any call. One of my favorite activities is to break down those calls so that we can see how we can improve on every single little aspect of it as we go along, because that's how you become better. And so I think being meticulous is important in becoming better.
That's awesome. I think that's a great example too. And a lot of times people come and start talking about combining that with being autonomy and start implementing that into the customer support. So I wonder how you combine detail-oriented customer support with autonomy, and what makes them separate.
Sure. And sometimes they can seem like an antithesis, like, you can't have one with the other. They can coexist. And one of the things that I like to do, and anytime I have the opportunity to lead, is to teach people correct principles and then allow them to govern themselves. And so over time, you develop a trust with all of the people that you're working with, in order to allow them to govern themselves. And that's really where you reach that autonomy that is important when it comes to any organization. But I feel especially in customer support, it starts with the people that you hire. You have to make sure that you hire people that you eventually know that you're going to be able to trust. But just to demonstrate, one of the things that I really like to do is break down calls, like I was talking about. I can take a 5-minute call and make it last an hour when we're breaking it down and listening to a call together. And first, you have to break down a call with somebody. If you have a new rep that's coming in, they're brand new to the phones, they're not going to know what the heck they're looking for. And so you start talking about some of these things like tone, and you talk about, I have a lot of soft skills that I work with people: collaborative speech, being able to smile while you're on the phone, being able to interpret what the customer is saying because they're going to have a different vernacular than you're going to have. A lot of different things that go into these calls. And first, you have to break down the call with somebody and tell them exactly what they need to work on. But then eventually, they're going to be able to know what things they need to work on. They'll be able to develop these soft skills to the point where you just ask questions and you say, what did you hear there? What do you think we can improve? And then they're actually going to be the ones that are explaining to you, these are the things that we can improve. And then after that, you're able to then have them sit in with another new agent because they've learned the soft skills, and then they can teach this new agent. And it's easier for a new agent to hear a peer talk about their experiences than maybe the supervisor or the manager or somebody who, they figure, knows it, backwards and forwards. Somebody who has their own experiences on their level can explain why these things are important. And then eventually you can develop that person into a supervisor where they can actually go in by themselves, break down calls with people, teach them, and you have that trust where now you've got an autonomy where peers are teaching peers and they're developing their own leadership skills, and really you can turn the reins over to your people. And then, I've always said that, good leaders create good followers, but great leaders create other great leaders. And that's how you develop a culture that is persistent throughout an entire organization. And so that's really how you develop that autonomy, even though, you interject a lot of meticulous detail. Eventually, they will be able to take the detail and run with it.
Very cool. And so you're talking a little bit about adding those skills and having other folks teach themselves. And you kind of brought it up a little bit earlier that you were doing some customer success, which inherently has some selling aspects to it. And so you have some experience selling as well as dealing with the customer support. So have you applied any of your selling experience to customer support?
Definitely. I think I like the idea that everybody should do sales at some point. Everybody should have experience selling something because it eventually helps you in anything that you want to do, where you're selling yourself in an interview, or you're selling yourself to a potential spouse, where you're saying, hey, you can marry me because I'm this, and this. Like, you're selling yourself at that point. But especially, I think when you're working with a SaaS product, and specifically in support, we are continuously selling because everything is subscription based. And so throughout a contract, we have year contracts, and throughout that year, we want to sell all of our customers on the fact that this is going to be the best software that you could possibly have for your business. And we're going to help you to squeeze every little ounce of value out of this product. And so you're never not selling. Every single call is the opportunity to sell. It's the opportunity to sell that, if you need to have this certain aspect in your business, well, we have that for you, and we're going to sell you on this is the best possible product that you could use for that aspect of your business. And that's how you create stickiness, where people eventually are saying, I can't do without your product, because every time I have a problem, you guys come in and you tell me how I can get value out of it. And so there's a sell point, right? And there's a renewal point. And those two times are looked at as selling points, but really every single customer touch point that we have needs to be viewed as this is a selling point. We're selling them on the fact that, this is a great product. We're selling them on the fact that we have the best support that they could possibly have, and that we'll always be there for them. And every single time that they reach out to us, we'll be able to get them an answer in a reasonable amount of time. And so I try to interject a lot of the soft skills that I teach are selling soft skills, where they're rapport building and they're asking pertinent questions and making sure that we get to know the customer and we get to know their business, and that we actually bond with them on a personal level so that we can sell not only a product, but a relationship where they're going to be able to depend on us no matter what. And so definitely all of those aspects of selling are necessary to be able to have a good support organization.
See, I love that part about how you're just interjecting additional skills to your agents, and I think that's a great experience. So, and I know some people can believe that anyone can do customer support, and as you're like building on these, can you explain why you believe that's not the case?
Yeah. So it's very important to have the discussion of, distinction rather, not discretion, that everybody might be able to do support, but not everybody can succeed in support, right? And so, anybody can pick up a phone and talk to somebody, but being able to succeed in customer support is actually an art I look at. And so some of my former employees or employers, the call center that I worked at prior to working at Canopy Tax, really it was the case of anybody off the street, basically if they were breathing, we were going to put them into a seat and we were going to have them, take calls and try to mold them eventually into a good customer support agent. And we saw a lot of turnover. We wasted a lot of money in training dollars because we basically brought people in and churned them out when we found out that they weren't really well suited. And so I think for our process up front, being able to decipher who is going to be a good fit for a support role is very important. And so in order to do customer support successfully, there's points that you need to get across that EQ, so emotional quotient and adaptability quotient, are much more important than intelligence quotient when it comes to doing customer support. You need to have some sort of intelligence, right? You need smart people in your corner, but being able to develop an emotional bond and to have the understanding of every single person that comes to your line, every single person that you interact with has a support problem. They may have a technical problem or something that they need help with, but they also have an emotional problem. Okay, every single person that comes to us, they've lost control and they need it back. Most of the people that we deal with are small business owners. And the reason that they're small business owners is because they didn't want to work for anybody else. They wanted to call the shots themselves. And so they developed their own business. And when they are developing their own business, that's because they like to have control. And then when the software doesn't work for them, they lose that control. So they have an emotional problem that needs to be solved as well as the technical problem. And so being able to have that EQ, understand emotions, and be able to resolve that emotional issue while also troubleshooting a technical issue is a skill that needs to be done that some people just don't understand. You can have technical support and customer support, and those are two very different things in my mind. Technical support would be basically troubleshooting just a computer system, and you could have a robot doing it. Whereas with customer support, it's really something where they're not only interacting with this system and troubleshooting the different softwares, but they're troubleshooting somebody's emotions as they're doing it. And even if we can't resolve on one call a technical issue, we can always take care of emotional issues. And so our goal is always to leave people feeling better after they got a call with us than they were before. Even if we didn't get the issue resolved, they need to feel better about their interaction with us. So you have the emotional quotient, and then adaptability quotient is also really important because sometimes we don't know the answers, and sometimes things have changed and we don't know about it, and we need to actually get in and figure out what's going on. I've talked a couple times about being able to decipher what the customer is saying. They use a different vernacular. Our customers, our demographic it tends to be a little bit older, a little bit non-computer savvy, if you will. A lot of them are moving over to a cloud solution because that's the thing to do, not because they actually want to do it. They'd much rather have a pen and paper. And so being able to adapt to the way that they're explaining things and being able to figure out where they're going in the system is an art form. It really is something that you have to be able to adapt to the way that they're telling it, rather than trying to actually explain it from your own point of view every single time. Because every customer is different, their abilities are going to be different, and so you have to be able to adapt to them. So if you can find somebody who has high IQ, high EQ, and high AQ, as well as thick skin, because as we know, customers don't come to you because they're super happy every single time. You know, they're coming to you with a problem over and over and over again. And so you get that positive person who can let the last call slide off their back and move forward. You've got a golden candidate right there. And so being able to see that up front is really, really important.
That's awesome. I love that you're just building that out and constantly developing their skill set. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. You're adding these skill set, you're grooming them so that way they can help and teach other folks as well. And can you expand a little more how you help your individual agents become leaders in that space?
Sure. It sounds obvious that getting better at anything takes practice, and support's no different. It's not something that you can just all of a sudden be a leader at. I didn't practice piano when I was in piano lessons, and I ultimately never became a piano player. And it's the same thing for leadership. And it's something that I think a lot of people miss with leadership is the opportunities that are afforded to us to actually lead. That's why I developed a lot of my leadership skills, is because early on I had a leader who saw those in me and allowed me a lot of opportunities to actually lead the team. And so with support, especially, I think because they're so customer facing, it's never thought of. It's a lot of times put on the back burner that somebody's going to just develop into a leader without any practice, without any guidance. And so they never get a chance to lead or become a leader. And thus, in a lot of organizations, you see a lot of poor leadership, because they just haven't been a leader before. They've been chosen because they were a good performer in whatever aspect that company was working with. So to combat this, in my organization, I attempt to give everybody some sort of extracurricular outside of their job responsibilities. So we have a software, and inherently with software, you're going to have some bugs. You're going to have things that people want that you don't have, so product requests. And so I have somebody who's in charge of those. You also have different products. And so I set one person in charge of being the expert of each of these different individual areas. And every once in a while, they will lead meetings based on their experience with those specific specialties. So I have somebody we have a tax prep product. And so somebody's in charge of being the tax prep expert. We have somebody who's in charge of all of our forms. And so I give them opportunities to lead and to step in front of the group and to actually lead meetings. And, I talked about earlier with calls, if you give people the opportunity to dissect calls with other people, then they will develop those skills and develop those one-on-one skills that it takes to actually, lead people and develop individuals that are under them. And so I think that's an important aspect of training these individuals to be leaders, is just giving them the opportunity. Even though they're peer-to-peer, a lot of times you'll see the cream rise above a crop to actually become those leaders, and organically they can develop those skills to be your next team leads and different things like that. And so giving them the opportunity is really the most important part to me. And then being an example of what you would like to see in your future leadership. is another just important aspect.
Yeah, sounds like a good leadership practice to me. Making a little bit of a shift here, as you're grooming them to and developing that leadership skills, where does data come into play here for that type of development?
Yeah. So yeah, data in my mind really helps to set people apart in terms of metrics. You set goals as a leader because your organization, you always want to be improving, you always want to be getting better, and so you set performance goals. And what data allows you to do is to see who will actually rise to the occasion, who's going to push forward and accomplish those goals, who's going to work hard until they become good enough. If there's quality metrics, they want to be the best that they possibly can on every single call or every single chat. If there's volume metrics, they're in there and they're actually staying 10 minutes after their shift, or they're there 10 minutes early so that they can get the volume numbers. You see that work ethic actually come into play when you are introducing some sort of metric, some sort of data that will allow you to push forward. That being said, I also think that it's important not to get lost in the data, right? And so we have all of these things that are metrics, and I have a lot in the back end that I measure that the team doesn't even know about. I measure just about everything, length of calls, I measure hold times, I measure all kinds of different things in the back end, and that's a lot of times for my eyes only, because not only do you need to have data to be able to separate your top performers, but you also need to measure a lot of their intangibles, I guess I'll say. So I love data, and I love jumping into the back end and to show people like, you're getting better at this, 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 and this. And it also introduces areas to improve all over the place. Like, you always have different areas to improve. Comes back to being meticulous, but at the same time, you don't want to allow that to shadow your opinion, because there's a lot of individual performers who aren't good leaders, right? And so I think making sure that when you're thinking about leaders, you take the data as one point and extracurriculars or intangibles as another point, and seeing who affects morale, seeing who affects this or that, things that are not measurable in the traditional sense, I think is important. And so those two things combined, data is very important when it comes to finding those who are actually going to put the work forth and who will stay after to help you, and who will be dedicated to the cause. At the same time, not everything, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, data, super valuable. Everyone's got to leverage it. To kind of wrap this up in a bow, I know that leadership requires some type of mission statement. What was yours for your organization?
So our data statement was wrapped up in two overall goals. Is one, we wanted to make sure that every user was an advocate. The cheapest way to spread word about your company is word of mouth. And if you have an excellent product, excellent support, and then you delight customers to the point where they will go out and be an advocate for you and tell their friends about you, tell their coworkers. That's why the NPS scale was developed, is, will you actually recommend this product to your peers? That is very, very important. And so developing every user as an advocate was one portion of our mission statement. And then ensure users get value quickly from Canopy, and meaningful, delightful enhancements and engagements. Those things are extremely important when it comes to our support organization. So really, that's the simplest way that we could put it. There's obviously lengthy mission calls and different things, but the mission statement is eventually just to make every user an advocate.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rob. So that pretty much wraps up our time together. Rob, I want to thank you for being a guest on my show, Outside In. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before to me or to the audience before I let you go?
Yeah, I guess just the most important thing is to ensure ownership, right? So ensure that in any organization, but especially in a support organization, that you have ownership over yourself, over your team, and over the organization, and that each one of them feel that as well. But that's the overarching goal for our support organization. And I'd like to thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time, Rob, and thanks to the audience for watching. I'm Anthony Khaletsky, and this has been Outside In.